I was supposed to be on a plane to Seattle. My sister's wedding, the same sister who'd been planning this day since we were kids playing dress-up in Mom's closet. But as I sat in the Uber, 20 minutes from the airport, my hand went to my purse for my phone and felt the empty space where my passport should have been. "Can you turn around?" I asked the driver. "I forgot something." He glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Probably saw this a dozen times a week. You'll miss your flight." "I know. Please. Just turn around." The drive back felt longer than it should have. I kept checking my phone. Boarding started in 90 minutes. If I was fast, if traffic cooperated, if the universe gave me just this one break, I could still make it. The house was quiet when I let myself in. David's car was in the driveway, which surprised me. He'd said he had back-to-back meetings all afternoon, some client presentation he couldn't reschedule. That's why he couldn't drive me to the airport in the first place. I should have called out. Should have announced I was home. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the unfamiliar car parked across the street. Or the way the living room looked undisturbed, like no one had been downstairs all morning. My passport was exactly where I'd left it on my nightstand, next to the book I'd been reading. I grabbed it, ready to run back out, when I heard David's voice from upstairs. His home office. The door must have been cracked open because his words carried down the hallway with perfect clarity. "By Thursday, at the latest," he was saying. "Once she signs the refinancing papers, everything transfers into the trust. The trust I control." I froze at the bottom of the stairs. "What about her mother?" A woman's voice. Not Melissa from his office. Someone younger. "The house in Charleston is still in her mother's name. Already handled. Power of attorney. The old woman thinks she's protecting herself from estate taxes." Laughter. David's laugh. The same laugh he'd used last month when I'd suggested we start trying for a baby. When he'd said he wanted to wait until things settled down at work. My phone buzzed. The airline, probably. Warning about check-in closing. I silenced it, pressed myself against the wall, and didn't breathe. "How much are we talking?" the woman asked. "The house is worth $900,000. Her business, my lawyer says, it's pulling $200,000 net profit annually. Conservative valuation puts it at $2.3 million. And she has no idea? She trusts me. That's the beautiful part. Show someone love for long enough, and they stop asking questions. They stop reading the fine print. I should have run. Should have gone back out the door, gotten in my Uber, flown to Seattle, and called a lawyer from there. But I needed to see her. Needed to see who my husband was conspiring with in our home, in the office. I'd helped him furnish when he'd said he needed a quiet space to work. The stairs didn't creak. I'd walked them 10,000 times. I knew which boards to avoid. Halfway up, I could see through the crack in the door. David sat at his desk, phone pressed to his ear. Bluetooth, I realized. She wasn't in the room. She was on the other end of the line. "The mom's the smart move," the woman continued. "Once you have the Charleston house, Rachel has nothing to leverage. No family safety net. She'll be completely dependent." Rachel. My name. Coming from a stranger's mouth like a chess piece to be moved. To be captured. David was smiling. That smile I'd fallen in love with 9 years ago when he'd helped me carry boxes into my first apartment. The smile he'd given me at our wedding when I'd walked down the aisle. The smile that had made me believe I'd found my person. "Don't worry about Rachel," he said. "She's so busy with her clients, she barely looks at our accounts. Last month, I moved $70,000 into the offshore account. She never noticed. The offshore account. The one he'd said was for tax optimization. The one he'd set up right after we'd gotten married, right after I'd sold my grandmother's jewelry collection for seed money for my consulting business. $70,000. My money. My work. My 16-hour days, building something from nothing. I must have made a sound. Or maybe he just sensed me the way predators sense prey. David turned in his chair, and our eyes met through the gap in the door. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he said into the phone, "I'll call you back." The office door swung open. David stood there, still holding his phone, his expression shifting through surprise, confusion, calculation. Landing on concern. Perfect, practiced concern. Rachel? Honey, what are you doing home? I thought you left for the airport an hour ago. I wanted to scream. Wanted to throw something. Wanted to ask him how. How could you do this? How could you look at me every morning and plan to destroy me? Instead, I held up my passport. My hand was shaking. Forgot this. His eyes went to the passport. Then to my face. Reading me. Measuring how much I'd heard. Were you on the phone? I asked. My voice sounded strange. Too calm. Like it belonged to someone else. Just a work call. Client stuff. He stepped toward me. Reached out like he was going to touch my arm. You're going to miss your flight. I stepped back. Who were you talking to? Rachel. Who was she, David? His jaw tightened. Just for a moment. Then the concern was back, stronger now. Baby, you're stressed. The wedding, your sister, all the planning. I heard you. The words came out quiet. Deadly quiet. I heard everything. We stood there in the hallway. 9 years of marriage between us. 9 years of me believing in us, in him, in the life we were building. And in that moment, I watched him decide which version of himself to show me. He chose the truth. Maybe because he knew there was no going back. Maybe because he'd always planned for this moment. Then you know, he said simply. The offshore account. The refinancing papers. My mother's house. Business. Rachel. It's just business. It's fraud. It's theft. It's smart. He cut me off. Your little consulting business? You think that happened because you're special? I introduced you to every single one of those clients. My contacts. My network. I built you, Rachel. Everything you have, you owe to me. I felt something crack inside me. Not break. Crack. Like ice before it shatters. My mother's house, I said again. She's 78. She doesn't need a 4-bedroom house in Charleston. The property taxes alone. Get out. David blinked. What? Get out of this house. Now. He laughed. Actually laughed. This is my house, Rachel. Check the deed. My name. My credit pulled the mortgage. You're the one who should leave. And that's when I understood. He hadn't just been planning to take my business, my mother's house, my money. He'd been planning to take everything. Including the roof over my head. I turned and walked down the stairs. Grabbed my suitcase from where I'd left it by the door. My purse? My passport. Where are you going? David called after me. Seattle. My sister's wedding. Remember? Rachel, don't be dramatic. We can talk about this when you get back. Work something out. I looked up at him. He stood at the top of the stairs, hands in his pockets, perfectly calm. Like we were discussing dinner plans. No, I said. We won't. The Uber was still waiting. God bless him. He looked up when I came out, took one look at my face, and didn't ask questions. Just pulled away from the curb when I gave him the address for a hotel near the airport. I didn't cry. Couldn't cry. My brain was moving too fast. Calculating. Planning. David thought I was going to Seattle. He thought he had time. Time to move money. Time to call his lawyers. Time to prepare. But I wasn't going to Seattle. I called my sister from the hotel. Told her I had food poisoning. That I was so sorry. That I'd make it up to her. She was disappointed, I could hear it in her voice, but she understood. That's what sisters do. They understand. Then I called the one person I knew I could trust. Rachel? My business partner, Jennifer, answered on the first ring. Aren't you supposed to be on a plane? I need a favor, I said. A big one. And I need you to not ask me any questions right now. Silence on the other end. Then. Okay. I need you to access our company accounts. All of them. And I need you to tell me if you see anything unusual. Any transfers. Any changes in the past 6 months. Rachel, what's going on? Please, Jen. Just look. I heard typing. Then more typing. Then a long pause that made my stomach drop. There's a transfer, Jennifer said slowly. Last month. 70,000 to an account I don't recognize. It's coded as consulting fees, but we didn't hire any outside consultants last month. 70,000. Just like he'd said. Is there more? I asked. More typing. 3 other transfers. Smaller amounts. 15,000 here. 22,000 there. They go back about 8 months. 8 months. Right around when David had suggested I add him as a co-signer on the business accounts. For emergencies, he'd said. In case something happens to you. I'd trusted him. Of course I'd trusted him. He was my husband. Rachel. I'm looking at the accounting notes, Jennifer said. Her voice had gone hard. These are all coded as legitimate business expenses. But I never approved them. Did you? No. Then someone forged our signatures. Rachel. This is fraud. I know. Can you lock him out of the accounts? I can try. But if his name is on them, do what you can. I'll call you back. I hung up and stared at my phone. David had stolen from me. From my business. From the company I'd built from nothing. But he'd made a mistake. He'd gotten greedy. And greedy people make errors. I opened my laptop. Started with our joint bank accounts, the ones David thought I never looked at because I was too busy. Took me 15 minutes to find the first discrepancy. A transfer to a business called Harrington Consulting Group. $25,000. Coded as property investment. I googled Harrington Consulting Group. Nothing. No website. No LinkedIn. No business registration in Virginia where we lived. Shell company. Had to be. I dug deeper. Found 3 more transfers to the same company. 50,000. 30,000. Another 40,000. All within the past year. Then I found the real estate transactions. Properties purchased in David's name. 3 of them. Investment properties, he'd told me. Building our future, he'd said. I pulled up the property records. The first house, a condo in Richmond, purchased 8 months ago for $300,000. Cash. The second, a townhouse in Arlington. $400,000. Also cash. We didn't have that kind of cash. Our savings account had maybe $40,000 in it. I'd seen the statement last month. Unless he'd been siphoning money for longer than I'd realized. Unless this had been going on for years. My phone rang. David. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail. Waited. The voicemail notification popped up. I played it. Rachel, come on. You're being childish. I know you're upset, but we need to talk about this like adults. I'm your husband. We took vows. For better or worse, remember? Call me back. Vows. He wanted to talk about vows. I called my mother. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding breathless. Rachel, honey, I just got back from my walk. Is everything okay? Shouldn't you be in Seattle? Mom, I need to ask you something. The papers David had you sign last month. The ones about the house. The estate planning documents? They're supposed to protect the house from probate. David explained it all. Mom, did you read them before you signed? A pause. Well, no. David said they were standard. And you'd looked them over, hadn't you? My blood went cold. I never looked at them, Mom. But David said. Mom, where are those papers now? In my filing cabinet. Why? Rachel, you're scaring me. Can you take them to a lawyer? Today. Right now. I'll pay for it. Just have someone look at them. Please. Rachel, what's happening? I think David is trying to steal your house. The words hung in the air. I could hear my mother breathing on the other end. Processing. I'm calling Margaret, she said finally. Margaret, her lawyer. The one who'd handled my father's estate. I'm calling her right now. Thank you. And Mom? Don't tell David we talked. Rachel. Please. Trust me. I hung up before she could argue. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I called David's phone and immediately hung up before it could ring. Just long enough to trigger his location sharing a feature we'd set up years ago. For safety, he'd said. His phone was still at our house. Good. He wasn't running. Wasn't panicking. He thought he had control. I spent the next 4 hours in that hotel room, going through every financial record I could access. Our joint accounts. My business accounts. Credit card statements. Investment portfolios. The pattern was clear once I knew to look for it. Small transfers at first. 1,000 here, 2,000 there. Amounts I wouldn't notice in the day-to-day chaos of running a business. Then larger amounts as he got bolder. As he realized I wasn't paying attention. By the time the sun set, I had a number. $243,000. That's how much David had stolen from me. From my mother. From my business. $250,000. Gone. My phone rang again. David. Again. This time, I answered. Finally, he said. Relief in his voice. Rachel. I've been trying to reach you for hours. I've been busy. Look, I know you're angry. But what you heard, you took it out of context. Let me explain. Explain what? How you stole from me. How you lied to my mother. How you've been planning to take everything I've built. It's not like that. Then what is it like, David? Silence. Then. Where are you? Does it matter? Rachel, come home. We need to talk face to face. This is our marriage. We can work through this. Our marriage ended the moment you decided to steal from me. I didn't steal. $243,000, David. I have the records. I have the transfers. I have everything. More silence. Longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. The concern was gone. What was left was cold. You can't prove anything. Watch me. You'll destroy yourself trying. That money went to business expenses. Legal expenses. Investment opportunities. I have documentation for everything. Fake documentation. Prove it. Take it to court. Spend the next 3 years in litigation while your business falls apart and you hemorrhage money on lawyer fees. By the time it's over, there won't be anything left to fight over. And there it was. His real plan. Not just to steal from me, but to make it impossible for me to fight back. I'll call you tomorrow, I said. After I've talked to my lawyer. Rachel. I hung up. Then I made a list. A long list. Everything I needed to do. Every piece of evidence I needed to gather. Every person I needed to talk to. David thought he'd won. Thought he'd planned for every contingency. But he'd forgotten one crucial thing. I was the one who built my business from nothing. I was the one who turned one client into 20, 20 into 50. I was the one who worked 16-hour days and learned how to read people, how to solve problems, how to survive. David had given me contacts. Maybe. At the beginning. But everything after that? That was me. And I wasn't going to let him take it. The next morning, I met with a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best family law attorney in Virginia. She cost $500 an hour, but I didn't care. I laid everything out. The transfers, the fake companies. The papers my mother had signed. She listened without interrupting. Then, she made some calls. Called in a forensic accountant. Called a colleague who specialized in fraud cases. By the end of the day, I had a plan. This is going to be expensive, my lawyer warned me. And brutal. He's going to fight back. Are you prepared for that? Yes. And you're sure about the evidence? Because once we file, there's no going back. I thought about David standing in our hallway. About the smile on his face as he'd planned to take everything. About my mother's house, my business, my money. I'm sure. We filed the next day. Divorce papers. Restraining order. Criminal fraud complaint with the police. I hit him with everything at once, didn't give him time to prepare, to hide more money, to cover his tracks. His lawyer called my lawyer within hours. Wanted to negotiate. Wanted to work something out. My lawyer told him no. David called my phone 17 times that day. I didn't answer. Sent every call to voicemail. Listened to them later. Heard his voice change from angry to desperate to threatening. You're making a mistake, Rachel. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to regret this. I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never work in this town again. Empty threats. All of them. Because I had what he didn't. I had the truth. The forensic accountant worked fast. Within a week, she traced every dollar David had stolen. The shell companies. The fake invoices. The property purchases. All of it. $243,000. That's what he'd taken. But the accountant found more. Hidden accounts. Properties in other people's names. A whole network of fraud that went back 5 years. 5 years. We'd been married 9. Meaning he'd started stealing from me before our 4th anniversary. My mother's lawyer called with good news. The papers David had gotten her to sign were fraudulent. Power of attorney obtained under false pretenses. The house was still hers. Safe. But David had already taken out a second mortgage against it. Another $150,000. Money that was supposed to go into a trust fund for our future children. Children we were never going to have. Because David had never wanted them. He just wanted my money. The police investigation moved slowly. Financial fraud always does. But my lawyer assured me it was moving. Depositions. Witness statements. Bank records subpoenaed. David hired the best criminal defense attorney money could buy. Probably using my money, I realized. Money he'd stolen. But it didn't matter. Because the evidence was overwhelming. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom and listened to David's lawyer argue that it was all a misunderstanding. That David had been trying to protect our assets. That I was a bitter wife trying to punish her husband for a failed marriage. The judge didn't buy it. Restitution. Full restitution of every dollar stolen. Plus penalties. Plus interest. The house went to me in the divorce. The cars. The savings. Everything. David got nothing. Well, not nothing. He got 3 years probation and a felony record. And I got my life back. It took another 6 months to untangle everything. To rebuild my business. To repair my relationship with my mother, who blamed herself for not being more careful, more suspicious. I trusted him, she kept saying. I trusted him because you trusted him. I know, Mom. I did too. Jennifer and I restructured the business. New accounts. New protocols. New security measures. Everything David had touched, we erased. And slowly, things started to feel normal again. I moved into a smaller place. Sold the house, too many memories. Started over in a neighborhood where no one knew me, where I could be anonymous. I changed my last name back to my maiden name. Reed. Rachel Reed. The person I'd been before David. Before the lies. And I learned something. Trust isn't weakness. But blind trust is. From now on, I would verify everything. Question everything. Protect what was mine. Because I'd built it. Not David. Not anyone else. Me. And no one was ever going to take that away from me again.